Awesome, you guys. Welcome back to the Monday call, the mindset, the market update, the motivation with Angie and Nikki. I'm going to let you ladies take it away as always. Thanks for being here. Happy Monday.
Perfect. Thank you, Carrie. Nikki, you're up.
All right, awesome. So last week was absolutely insane when it comes to mortgage interest rates and turns in the market and things of that nature. So we're going to kind of go through it. I have my notes here, so you might see me looking down because I got to make sure I get my numbers correct on what's been going on in the market. But just a lot of changes that happened last week that are influencing what's going to happen this week and what we're going to see into the future. So last week we got inflation numbers. This is important because, as you know, and as I've told you, inflation numbers directly affect how the Fed looks at that interest rate. Right now, they're using it at 8.5%. As inflation numbers decrease, that in theory, that Fed rate will decrease, which in theory will help the bond market respond positively, which in theory will lower mortgage interest rates. So that's kind of the chain of events that we have to look at. Last week, the big news that happened is that the headlines, or what the prediction was for inflation, is that it would go up by 0.3%. When the numbers actually came in, or the core numbers came in, that number was actually 0.5%. So that was kind of like a surprise or a shock to the market, and the response was obviously negative. So that was the month-over-month numbers that they were expecting to be lower than what they actually came in at. When they looked into the numbers, or when we look into the numbers and say, okay, what caused this? There's a couple of key factors that happened in January that may have caused this increase in inflation that we were not expecting. We can point to the services of portfolio management. In other words, people who are investing, and how much the financial planners and portfolio managers are charging for those services, and legal services. Again, how much a consumer is paying for those legal services. Those amounts jumped up higher than expected. So what they think happened is that as the market turned last year, and as the business was coming into the door, the portfolio management and the legal servicing just increased their fees to go along with everything else that's been increasing over the past year. So that was not predicted to happen, but it did affect the PPI, or the product price index, which affected inflation, which made it go up higher than expected, which made mortgage interest rates go up higher than expected. Last 3 days of last week, so in other words, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, our interest rates we were so happy we were in the low sixes. Now we're in the upper sixes. Average across the United States is about 6.8% today. Keep in mind the market is not open today because of the holiday, so based on Friday, 6.8% is the average interest rate across the nation at this point. So we are kind of waiting to see what happens from that standpoint, waiting again for that Fed meeting in March to kind of just ease everybody's intensity and ease everybody's thought process on where the market should be going, and hopefully seeing those interest rates push back down a little bit into the low sixes by the mid-March standpoint. So a lot of things happened last week. Again, we're hoping that this Fed meeting in March kind of puts things at ease, and we can see those interest rates come back down. So that's kind of what's happening from an interest rate standpoint. To go along with that, a lot of people, when they hear this, the big news stories are, oh my gosh, interest rates went up, we're headed for another housing bubble. So I want to just put everyone's ease at mind with some statistical data that shows us that this is not going to happen. Okay.
That is why I love you.
I know. Yes. It's okay. We have real numbers to put towards this. Okay. So when we talk about the first housing bubble, which just happened in 2000, let's just call it 2005 to 2008. When that happened, the average first-time home buyer during that time was born between the years of 1973 and 1977. Okay. Now keep in mind, the number of children born during that time decreased significantly from years prior to that. That was due to the Roe v. Wade legislation that was passed. Therefore, there weren't as many live births happening between that time. When that section of individuals started to become the first-time home buyer age, that was between that time of that 2006 to 2008. Okay. This year, and right around this time, when we have the average of first-time home buyers, they are born an average in 1987. Okay. So why that's important is because although the birth rate has increased since between those 1973 and 1977, the housing market and how many options of completions of home has not increased over the amount of people being born or amount of potential first-time home buyers. So let me show you what I mean by this, and I'll show you it in a chart so that you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about. So if you take a look at between this housing bubble situation right here, between 2005 and 2008, this is when those first-time home buyers, again, these formations is the amount of births or the amount of people that have the potential to be first-time home buyers in this time period. You can see that the amount of people that have potential to purchase homes is significantly less than the number of completed homes. Okay, so the number of new builds, number of homes that were completed during those years. If you consequently look over the last, let's just call it 8 years, you can see that the number of births or number of first-time home buyers or potential first-time home buyers has increased over the number of completed homes. Okay, so this is what we call that lack of inventory. This is why we say there is a lack of inventory. This right here in the 2006 to 2008, that causes a housing bubble. This over here does not cause a housing bubble. We don't have nearly enough homes to be causing that housing bubble. Not enough people leaving their homes, not enough first-time home buyers being able to find new homes, things of that nature that are not going, so that demand is still going to be there and is going to be there for quite some time into the near future, unless the new builds can catch up or unless the builders can keep going on their building of the homes. Now, with all that being said, the housing numbers also came in. Woohoo! So we got a lot of new news. So the single family housing sales are moving up higher. The sales expectations or the expected sales into the next year, again, higher. And the buyer traffic, again, higher. Those are the three things that we look at when we talk about how the spring market is going to behave, how we're going to behave into the summer and into the fall. And all those things are actually higher than estimated. And it's looking really good into the spring market. So the demand is going to be there. We don't have to worry about the housing bubble. It's really the supply that needs to catch up. And we'll be saying this, we'll be having this discussion for 5-10 years from now, is continuously that supply has to catch up. The supply has to catch up. And we can predict that there is no reason for us to even think that there's a housing bubble because of the demand of the houses that are coming on. So a lot of information, a lot of numbers from last week. So that's kind of where the market is updating. On the streets or things that I've experienced in the last week that I want to kind of remind you of or talk about a little bit is short sales and foreclosures. As we move into the spring, as inflation stays high, as these things happen, we are seeing more and more short sales and foreclosure opportunities for our buyers and for our sellers. So keep in mind a couple of key things to keep in mind when you're looking at either listing a short sale or a foreclosure or helping a client purchase a short sale or foreclosure. Keep in mind the lender has the final word. If the lender does not say it's okay, it's not okay. We had a client who wrote a purchase agreement on a property. They got it accepted at $260, and we did all the work. We put we got the loan approved. Everything was ready to go. They were ready to close. And the listing agent called and said, "Oh, by the way, I haven't received approval from Fannie Mae yet." This means that the lender on their home hadn't given permission for that listing agent or for that seller to sell that home at that purchase price. When they finally did hear back from Fannie Mae said, "No, we're not going to sell the home. We're not going to allow you to sell that home at $260. You need to sell the home at $275. So a $15,000 difference. First-time home buyer, first experience with purchasing a home, went in and bought a foreclosed property thinking everything was going to be just as it should be. We did all the lending. The buyer's agent did their due diligence, and unfortunately, Fannie Mae had never signed off on it. The $15,000 difference meant $8,000 in closing to our client, who she was okay with. When it came down to it, not only was it $15,000, but the homeowners association also had a $33,000 lien on the home that the listing agent failed to mention in the listing, etc. So, and the association had not filed or had just filed the lien paperwork, so it did not show up on title right away. So All this is to say the buyer canceled their contract and is out looking for a new home. She has a 3-week time frame now to get out of her apartment and move into this home. So now we're under pressure as the lender to get lending on another property. The buyer's agent is under pressure to find her a place to live that she can be happy with and okay with. And now this listing agent has lost the potential buyer for the home because they did not clear things with Fannie Mae at all. So just some things to keep in mind, big headaches that you could be causing those all around. Make sure when you do get offers on the property, it's subject to lender acceptance. If you are listing a foreclosure property or a short sale property, always subject to lender approval. Also, in Minnesota particularly, we have sheriff sale dates. Make sure you pay attention to your sheriff sale date so that during the redemption period, in other words, from the sheriff sale date till 6 months later, they can sell that home in redemption and it does not go back to the bank, and they can make profit. The seller can make profit on that home during that 6 months. What that means is if they have a home that's going into foreclosure, let's say they owe $150,000 on it, and it's actually worth about $300,000. Anytime during that 6 months, they can sell the home and keep the difference. Pay out, make the bank whole, and keep the difference. It doesn't matter how far behind they are. It doesn't matter if they've, missed 800 payments. As long as that sheriff sale has happened and we are within the 6-month time frame, they can make profit off of the sale of that home. Pay off the bank and make whole on that. That's important. Number one, for make sure you have your timing down. Let us know. We're going to predict our 6 months. Let us know what the bank says is their 6 month. What is the end date? We want to close well before that. Also, make sure that they know that if they do short sale the property, that the waiting time for them to get a new mortgage is reduced 2 to 4 years instead of 3 to 7. So keep that in mind as well. So all these things that are going to be important as we see sellers go into foreclosure, as we see buyers coming in and wanting to buy those foreclosure properties. We also all know that foreclosure properties tend to be not in the best of shape. If they're not in the best of shape, if they need repairs, again, we can help them. We can help the buyers with that. Go in, buy the home, finance the repairs of that home or the renovation of that home, and make it a beautiful home for them to live in. So just some things to keep in mind as I'm seeing this situation unfold last week, not only with interest rates, but also with short sales and foreclosures.
Wow. Yeah, they're back.
I know.
It's almost like going back to that time. And I remember again, because it's been a while, but I got in the business at the tail end of that. And I know many people watching this call probably were in the thick of it. And yeah, just not knowing. I mean, is it still the case where we just don't have control over? It could be 6 weeks, it could be 6 months. I had a foreclosure short sale that went 10 months. I mean, we're expecting to move in October and it didn't happen until March, and the buyer just could wait and did wait. But man, it's just, is it still going to be a lot like that?
It is. So keep in mind that when I say the number of foreclosures are increasing, that is true. But also keep in mind that is not going to cause a housing bubble. We are seeing an increase in foreclosures, but it's not the level that we were at back in 2008. Not even close.
Yeah.
So it can take the bank a while. So the bank is once you miss your first mortgage payment, you can miss up to 4 mortgage payments before the bank starts foreclosure processes. Now, that's when they have the right to start it. If you make that, if let's say you're 90 days late and you make a payment during the between 90 and 120 days, they cannot start that foreclosure process. Okay. So you have to be at least 120 days late for them to start it. Then once they started, it determines whether or not when they go to short sale is, let's say you didn't make your 4th payment, it's got to go to somebody's desk. Somebody's got to be able to grab that loan, talk to you, try to work out a modification, put efforts forth in a lot of different ways to make sure that you can stay in their home. And the impetus now is with the lender to make the effort to modify that mortgage before they put you into foreclosure. They are supposed to be using that full 120 days to do so, trying to get a hold of you. If they can't, that's when it's going to hit somebody's desk. And then they're going to contact the county and see when the availability for that sheriff sale is. In that case, it might have been that the county said, we're not holding any sheriff sale, or we're not completing this, or we're not doing this for another 3 months. whatever that timeline is that the lender works out with the county, that's when that sheriff sale will happen in the state of Minnesota. And then you have 6 months from that sheriff sale date in order to redeem the property. And then once that 6 months is passed, that's when the property goes back to the bank. And then the bank has complete say on when the home gets sold, when it gets listed, who it's listed, what they'll sell it for, the whole deal. During the redemption, you and the bank have to come to an agreement on the sale.
Yeah. So if you're not in the state of Minnesota and you're wondering about this, reach out to Nikki and she can let you know what that looks like in your state, because she's licensed in many, many, many states. I think, yeah, this is good. I'm so glad you brought this up, because think about that situation that happened last week and all the different things that could have been put in place and should have been put in place to not have this buyer in this position. And as these are coming back up, whether you were agent before or not, we all need this refresher, and we all need to reframe what this looks like, what questions to ask, because it's been a while, a hot minute since, and it's not going to be anything like it was before. So these will still be, here and there. It's not going to be as prevalent as it was. So understand that and ask the right questions. Lean on amazing, mortgage lenders like Nikki to understand this and to know and ask the questions that you don't know to ask. I mean, does this go, and I don't want to point blame. That's not what I want to do, but I want to understand based on that situation, was it the listing agent's responsibility? Was it the buyer's agent should have been calling the association or the bank? Or, there's just so many more moving parts. I think it's really important to understand when you're up against a foreclosure or a short sale, Nikki, what would you say as a listing agent as the top things to do, and as a buyer's agent are the top things to do to make sure that that situation doesn't happen again?
First and foremost, anytime you're listing a foreclosure, you write a purchase agreement or you accept a purchase agreement on the property. It is always subject to lender approval. Okay. Always, always, always. It doesn't matter how far in the process you are. It's always subject to lender approval. In this case, Fannie Mae. Make sure you keep that in mind. Make sure, and just like with anything, it's all about transparency. Should the listing agent have put that on the purchase agreement? Absolutely. Should they have been calling Fannie Mae and let everyone know that they didn't have Fannie Mae approval? Absolutely. Should the buyer have known to put pressure on the listing agent or the buyer's agent know to put pressure on the listing agent to get that approval? Absolutely. Should the title company have told us, have told the agents, hey, we just talked to the association and there's another $30-some thousand that needs to be owed here, that they could fall into first position if this doesn't get paid. I mean, there's responsibilities across the board. And the biggest thing that I can say is communication, communication, communication. Could we as a lender have, called the association and just made sure that everything was good to go with them? Absolutely. Could they, a lot of things could have happened. And it's just, the idea is over ask the questions, over reach out to those parties involved, double check, ensure, make sure, triple check, ask again and again and again to make sure that the ducks are in the row, everybody's doing their part, and everything is figured out. There's liens that can come up on title, that you don't know about during these foreclosure processes. There are, the bank might not get back to you for 3 weeks. The bank might say, hey, yeah, we'll have them purchase this property, but we're not going to be willing to close on this home until this date, that type of thing. And so make sure your timelines are in line, make sure you over communicate, and make sure you're asking all the people, the association, the title, the buyer's agent, the lender, all those people, where they're at with everything and what's happening.
Yeah. So be that agent, go above and beyond, and then go above again, and then do it again. And be, sometimes those agents are looked at differently, especially in the last 2 to 3 years. It was annoying how much, especially buyer's agents were hounding listing agents because of the market, but be that annoying agent that won't let up, because you owe it to your client, it's to the fiduciary duties, and to make sure if there's anything that you can, come across that maybe you don't even foresee. And that is why, and I'll leave it with this, unless you have anything else to add, who you partner with is so very important. I cannot say that whether you're a week in the business or 20 plus years, they are a direct extension of you. Find business partners and vendors and lenders and title and inspectors and find people that meet your standard or exceed it. Do not just put someone in there because you need someone in there. Big disservice to the whole process. So who you're in business with matters. I've heard that up to 44 people touch a single real estate transaction. Now, you can't control all 44 of those, but of the ones you can pick and choose, pick the very best. Pick Nikki. Let's go. Come on, guys.
Thank you.
It matters because they can foresee this. And especially if you're newer, look up Nikki. Talk to me. We'll have to help you get these people because they are a direct extension. It all comes back as a reflection on you. And you're not going to know everything to ask. Even 20 years, I brought things to my team lead that had been, when I was on a team that had been in the business for 20 years. And at one point she's like, seriously, where are you finding this? I've never heard of this. I never heard of that. What are you doing? So even experienced agents that have seen it all and done hundreds of transactions, I've stumped them. So know that you just can always be learning and expanding, and this market is forever changing. Once again, who you partners with matters. And I'll leave it at that.
Anyone have any questions?
Yeah.
Either pertaining to what we talked about or anything else?
I can't see the live chat, so I apologize. If you're watching on the live stream and have questions, Nikki, shout out your phone number so they can give you a call.
Sure, 952-484-1584.
Perfect. Contact her, get in contact. This is all amazing information. I mean, the housing bubble stat, where else have you seen that? Where else can you now go and really explain that and have this understanding? It blows my mind. You are amazing. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Well,
right,
thank you. I
everyone.
appreciate that. And yeah, everyone have a great week, and hopefully let's hope those interest rates kind of respond nicely this week.
Yes, we'll see you next Monday, and we'll see what Nikki has to report back.
Sounds good.
Thank you.